Today you guys are going to learn all about fill and stroke effects. Simply, this is how we change the color, fill the color, put color on the outside, the outline, and then some different special effects we can do with those things. So the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to open up the fill and stroke document that I have put on the class website. So if you click on that link, it'll take you to it and you can just download it. The next thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at this top row right here, fill and stroke. So I'm going to zoom in using Control and then the plus symbol. So here, we're just going to focus here on the fill and stroke, the just fill, and the just stroke. So the stroke is a term that's used to call the outline. So the stroke is the outline of each shape. The fill is the color on the inside. So if you notice, this has a fill and an outline, which is a stroke, just a fill, and just a stroke. So there's a few things to know about these things. When you have shapes with fills and you click on them, anywhere you click, the shape opens up. You can grab it. On the one that's just a stroke, if you click in the middle, I'm clicking around here, it doesn't click. You have to click on the outline. So if you're ever working with shapes and you have some shapes that are just strokes, you have to click on the outline to move them around. Now, how we can tell the colors of these objects is when we click on one, this one, the fill and stroke, you'll notice over here our color panels, our little color swatches. The fill is yellow and the stroke is blue. You also can see that up here. Now, in the last episode, I showed you that you guys can click here to bring down this box and fill with other colors. And you can also bring down this box and fill with other colors. You can also do it by double clicking on the fill or stroke here to bring up colors. And if you click on the stroke in the background, it brings it to the foreground and you can click on it. This is where you also find out about the color codes and everything like that. So this is simply your fill and your stroke. This one is just a fill, and how we can tell that it's just a fill without a stroke on it, because it could have a white stroke and we wouldn't know because of the background being white. But how we know that there's no stroke is if you look up here, the fill is yellow and the stroke is the white box with the line through it. When you have the red line through it, that means that there's nothing there. So here we have, once again, the yellow fill and then the white stroke box with the red line through it, meaning that there's nothing there. It's transparent. So there's absolutely no stroke on this. On this one, we click on it and we see the exact same thing, but opposite. We have our blue fill, or our blue stroke, and our fill is none. So it's the white box with the line through it. A quick little thing that you can do, let's say you're creating some shapes and you decide that you don't want a stroke on this, you want a fill, and you want the fill this color, all you have to do is come over here and you see these little arrows, you can swap them. And now you have a fill and no stroke, or we can swap it back. So that's how you guys fill colors, is by picking those options. Now how you can make the stroke or the outline either really thick or really thin is pretty simple. The other thing we can do with this stroke is we can actually change the thickness of it or the weight of it. So if you look at this stroke here, it's decent size. How we can tell the different weights of it and how thick it is if you look up here, it says stroke, and then this means that these settings are about your stroke. So it's at 4 point. If we click up, you can see that it starts to get thicker. Now you notice the bounding box is in the center, and so the stroke is getting thicker evenly on each side. So we can make the stroke very large, or we can go all the way down to 1 point. You can actually go lower than 1 point. You could do 0.25. It's a very tiny stroke. Most of the time when we're working, we'll do things like one or more. So I had this set to a 4 so you can see it. So that's how you can change the stroke. You can also change the different type of stroke if you want to get it a little more artsy. You can kind of change some things up. You can also change if you want the crazy outline, some weird little things. So these are all different things. And a lot of times there are uh, sites that you can go to download special things. We're not going to be doing any of that. We're just going to be working with the basic strokes and the uniform outline. Every once in a while we might change these for little artsy purposes, but for the most part you just work with it regular. The opacity is how transparent or see-through your object is. So you can lower this down to create like a watermark and then raise it up. So that's the pretty basics. This is just some of the settings. The rest of the settings for your stroke and outline are going to be over here under our stroke tool. If this isn't up, if you go to Window, go down to Stroke, and click on that, then this will pop up. So I'm going to pull this out over here. So here you have the weight, like I was telling you, 4 points. Then you also have the caps. So these are the simple way that it ends if you have a straight line. So I'm going to show you an example. So if we have a straight line, you can have it to where it's just a butt cap, which just means that it's flat. You can have a rounded cap, or you can have a projecting cap. So it goes past the point. This cap goes right at the end. So that's your standard setting. You also have miter joints, and we're going to learn about these here in a minute. So these are all your settings, your align settings, and once again, I'm going to talk about these here in a minute. And then also if you want dashed and uniform, things like that. So this panel is where all of your settings for the stroke is, and this is a really good panel to have. So the next thing we're going to look at, and we'll scroll down here, is we are actually going to look at the align settings. So I showed you guys the caps. We're going to move down here to the align settings. We'll get to corners in a minute. So the align setting is pretty simple, and the picture shows it really well. You have this first one, which is in the center. So if you notice, your bounding box is in the center of your stroke. No matter how large you make the stroke, the bounding box is always going to stay in the center. Then the next one we have is the stroke is on the inside. So your bounding box is on the outside. This is nice if you have a very specific size that you have to keep something, but you still want a border around it. So you could put your align the stroke to the inside. So every time you increase or decrease, it does it on the inside. So essentially you could almost fill a square, but it would just be easier to create a square. So that's on the inside. This one is the opposite. You see the bounding box is on the inside here and the stroke is on the outside. So no matter how large you make the stroke, it's always going to be on the outside of the box. Now let's go down here and we're going to go back to corners. So this is the 90-degree or miter corner. It's joined at a 90-degree angle right here. It's just put together. So sharp corners. Then you have your rounded joint, and it's called that because the corners are rounded. And then you have your bevel joint, where it has kind of this trim on the edges. And there's different things that you can do for these. You can change all your settings. You can have a butt cap with a rounded joint aligned to the inside. So you can change all of these. Now notice when you align it to the inside, it does change it out of the rounded joint. It no longer works that way, but it works on the outside. So sometimes you have to click around and play with the settings to see what is best for your design. The next thing we have is we have our rectangle again, but this time we turned on the dash line and we picked a dash line. Now you'll notice there's two different kinds of dash lines. There's the dash line where it continues just around, and then there's the dash line where it kind of caps it at the ends. Then you can change this for your dash, so it's at 12 right now, so let's see what it looks like at 20. And that's how big the gap is. So you see there's less. So each dash is smaller. So we can actually make the dash, let's try 2. Oops. You have to make sure it's selected. So I'm changing it to 2, and you'll notice that they're very small. So once again, you really have to adjust this based off of your design. and the size of your design. So then we also have our dashed line, but with dots. So now you'll notice the gap is at 15. It rounds to the corner, so there's always going to be one on the corner. And then it's a rounded cap and a rounded joint. So if you were to click on this one, you could do rounded cap, rounded joint as well, but you don't want the dash 12 points. So see how that's how you could make kind of rounded ones. Here, it's left at 0, which is why they're so small, and we're just worried about the gap. So you can change this to 25, and it's more space. You can change it back. Just undo. If you select it and you change this to 1, now you're starting to have more dashed lines. So you see how you can play with these to get basically any look that you really want. The next and last one is your arrowheads. So you'll notice that you can click here and you can actually pick a bunch of different arrowheads, even like pointer fingers, things like that. So there's all these different types of arrowheads and almost like the ends of some arrows. And they're all just different arrowheads with different scales, sizes, and the way that they're aligned. So what you're going to do for this activity is you are going to open up your stroke panel using the Windows tab or over here, and you are going to create your own shapes. Now in the first row, I want it to be a fill and stroke just like this square here. You will be required to use different colors. For the top row, I want circles, and I'll write circle on here for you. So first row, circles. Make that a little larger so it's easy for you guys to see. So you don't have to add any text, but so I want you to do circles instead of squares. And then for the strokes, I want you to do rectangles. Hopefully I spelled that right. Now for the joints, you are going to have to do squares, so just leave that the same. And then you're going to do dashed line with 2 different types of dash lines. They don't have to look exactly like this. You're going to do your own dash lines and your own arrowheads. And you're going to come up with your own colors, your own thicknesses and strokes, and all of that. I want you to kind of really play around and get comfortable with these tools. So you're going to create your own version of this activity. And then you're going to take a screenshot of yours, and you're going to turn it in with your first and last name, followed by fill and stroke. So that's what the screenshot using the snipping tool is going to look like. So make sure you use the snipping tool. You're going to have to get really comfortable with this. You'll click New, and you will take a screenshot of it, go up to File, Save As, and then Fill and Stroke. And you will save it as a JPEG file, and you will turn that into Google Classroom.